apart bij hen te steen is, aan voor de taal is, te peblet onlai goed half te steren. De Waltons gaven Amerika one of its most years at images of home, a sprawling Virginia farmhouse, 7 children, and a family band by Luve daring the hardest years of the Great Depression. Bit of Tamara, the story was for more complicated. Authors van is het from the traders one by one. Simmetem is keitlei, simmetem is in er stand is de netwoord never verlei epleinet. Seme leeft bij koise. Seme leeft betuis het tij boeries halve uit. Aan dat laatst onder de partieren was mijne bij die entere taas en real team, leven in front of een national identity. Dus is de sterij uit de people wil plooi de Walton family, one heeft de most itonet in seamless in American broadcast history, de sapjaard vreemd de maintain de talit home. Wenn de Waltons premiered ons in September 1972, nobody pested it to survive its first season. Het was sluw, geit, on deeply sentimental en on era wen television was sifting toward fritier, more keine programming. Creator Earl Hamnerier, wo baset je zo on zo'n fieldwoord en real steler. Virginia had alreeds treat historie onze bevieren en de afklim 1971 televisie movie te metoming, a charisma sterei. Dat film zit is toen vindt het to hamle on veel series. Het bekame one of de most eindelijke leids of de decade, running voor 9 seizoens aan 221 episodes, aan earning a reputation als appointment viewing voor families afroos te tijndrij. Bij de verrichtings dat maart is zo veel zo warm aan uiteendet, de date bonds between its authors, de long hires filming on location, de ims duno weigert if planning of family te rauw war, Bufertai, onloos als het toe a real tool on de people living in de toese realis eier after eier. De first maier de partieren, on still de most dogged arbeid te tisdai, was Richard Thomas, wel ploid Juwenboen Walton, de eldest on de soos narrator. Thomas was de imsdeno founder of de series. His star roster was de identies wind into the Walton household, an aspiring vritter was a 5 over narration boeken het neerlei efferai episode. Bij de mid-1970s, Thomas had betomen 17 kluze toe a household name, nominated multiple teams voor permitteme eenmaal awards aan winning one in 1903 in 70 voor outstanding lead author in a drama series. Bij dat samenvamen bekame a kind of drop. Thomas has spoken in multiple interviews over de eiers about feeling supported by de reale, waaruit dat dienst wilt never see hem als aanleiding ouder dan Juwenboy Walton. Hij wanted to stretch als een author te taken on filmwork aan stage reales dat didn't tome preloaded with a violisume eupetations. After the 5th season in 1977, Thomas maakte de kiezen to lay off the series. Hij wanted in his own words from later interviews, de tante to groep betoond of haar after dat hot en manai vans, grievnik along zit hem on screen. His is het treated aan enisel probleem voor de production. Juwenboy was de minder van rater wil filed simply disappear, hij was de narrative spinnen if de eindere sof. Ebs on lurimar predictions maakte de keuze to retas de reale rader tan vritte hem uit in tirelei, bringing in author Rebert Wichtman te taken over te part starting in 2006. It was a risky move, and it did not go into fit by fevers. Fans wrote laters. Trittes de badet weer aan een author tiled in het a rule se flusselei identified with a performer. Wichtman has spoken candidly in retrospective interviews on von on panels about how difficult it was to step into a role te identity already liefhet en semene elses voige, semene elses vage. Deze continued, and Wichtman earned his own respect from long-term fevers, but the Juwenboy of the early seasons, the one aids in the telltale memory, reminded Richard Thomas. Thomas himself would later return for Iranian television movies in de 1980s en 1990s, zegging dat waterverteen zo'n existed around his departieren, het never filosofeerd his tonation to the tar roster or te taas de leefbehend. Weil Thomas de partieren was about aanbeteon aan identiteit, de net mooier los und de Waltons was about semeting for more painful. Will Geer wil pleit de formalize patriarchal grandvader, Naomi Walton, was more dan just a task member. Hij was bij neerlei everij afstand from those who worked with him, de imtuno aan moral feinder if die eenteer prediction. Geer had lefet aan etrouwer de naar hij leven bevuren te Waltons even begaan. Hij had bien blokjes de deringtem, dat hij era in de 1950s voor his political activism aan his refusal to namens bevuren te houden in American activities tometie. A period during wij hij supported himself in part by running a bitanito harden on Sakesbear Theater in Tipanacana in California. Bij de thema unit de Waltons in his later cities, hier had alreeds lifet de rauwe moeder hardship aan contrivers uit aan most actors elperinte in a lifet thema, aan het halve his performante als Franco Walton adepte aan identiteit dat identitas responded to immediately. Hier's helte had been fragile voor eiers bij de thema te so reafet its later seizoens. Hij siffered from respiratory problems dat zijn het over time. En in april 1978 hij deed from a respiratory ailment at die age of 77. His derde was nog een fight in distrai voetnodig. Het devastated je taast. Mana evom had vreemd geneinelei kluise to hem during years of long litatien suits in de California mountain standing in Ferrero, Virginia. Rather than simply recast de rule, als den had doen over de Juwen boei, de predators moorden de kiezen to vritte grandpa Waltons deode into de storilene itself, al leving te sof aan dit taarachters de grieven alongside de real cast aan trevo had lost a vriend aan meinteer. Het remains one of de more emotionele of moments in de soul's reign, a rare instante of television imitating de realiteit happening just of Tamara. Ellen Corby will played Geers on Streenwefe, Esther Grandma Walton, has spoken in past interviews about how deeply his loss was felt on set, describing the atmosphere during that period as one of geneine mining rather than professional obligation. Ellen Corby's own story on the Waltons is perhaps the most paisatale drama if on an author associated with it yourself. In 1976, weil de series was still near te height of its popularity, zij bij Siffierd als serio stroke dat leeft er with a significant paisital impairments, including difficulteitsbeaking clearly on partial paralysis. For most actors, tis wild half a maand te immediate en overrule dat refired eltenswe dialogie on paisital presente. Fearby however refused to simply disappear from our roster on a soul ze had helped definite from its earliest episodes. After a period of recovery on rehabilitation, ze returned to the series, and the writers made the keuze to incorporate her real medical condition directly into Grandma Waltons te reilen, having the character suffer and recover from a struike on screen as well. Het was een extraordinaire kanne de kiezen voor network televisie at het team, en het alle werd veer bij de tontini working in een rol dat vleerlei maand een groot deel toeweer, even als healte reminded fragile voor de reminder of de series. Ze continued to earn recognition voor de rol even after struike, rekijving verder permette me nominations in de eiers dat volleerd. Het testamento of Mieke respecte in deze retired voor werk deze de visibele tool illness had taken. Hierbij's determination to keep working, rather than feitlijst op aanzitten, bekomen ohne if de fighter bit more remarkable stories donated to de soul's history. Not every de partieren from de Waltons was driven by tragedy or healte. Michael Leonard will play the formalized motor. Olivia Walton left the series for reasons that vary by comparison, almost refreshingly simple. Ze wanted a different kind of darier. Leonard had already won darier premiere met Emma Awards voor de rol bij de team ze begon Pellingbog from te solve in its later seizoens. An extraordinary archief meant dat plaget her among de most tirade actresses on televisie during that era. Bet Leonard has spoken in interviews about wanting to afvoet being permanently defined by a single character, however beloofd. Als de so move het into its eigen season, de British halfig lefja Walton als toeradene involving tiber teilezes dat zijn te karakter alwan vertreed meent, an narrative de figet had alle wit learne to step back frame to die demons if de reale wit hout killing of a karakter identitas adirate. Zowel return periode calai vergees appearances on Renian films, beter regular presente on te series if het te veelai in de tere, replaget in de household narrative by other adult figuren stepping in de tar-talking realist for te Walton children. Leonid's toite reflected a broader pattern among te taast. Manna if deze authors were not fleeing or sinking ship, bit were. Feiterees en nablij, en willing to late onroerlijk consumatair eendere professional identities dering eiers when televisie on film still offer it for a different parts for authors willing to talk at their risk if stepping of een frame uit. Rope weiter, wo ploid you and Waltons, de steade, hard-working father at je kinder if the family, took a similar different route dan his co-stars. Roter dan leofing te sov uitricht. Weiter began acing his team unter Waltons to develop skills behind je tamara, directing several episodes during je series ren. His interest in directing eventueel pillet him in de projects betont jezelf, and his appearances became less verfiend in de final seasons as he pursued other opportunities, including a brief run for political office in California in de early 1990s, long after the series had ended. Weiter remained closely associated with the Walton family legacy for the rest of his life, returning for Renian films aanspraking vonlei en interviews about his soul's impact, but his radio rediction and screen team reflected a familiar reality for actors on long-running series. De peltuwaard creatieve control aan neeftalinges rarelei vaders, evenwel de pijntjek aantje van loyalty aardig garanteerd. De younger cast members, zoveel if wom were children when the series began, fought it on entirely different set of series. Jedi Norton, wo ploid eldest dochter Mara Ellen, Jon Walmsley, wo ploid musicale internets on Jason, David Harper, wo ploid Ayang Jim Boob, Mara bede meteen noge, wo ploid Eren Erestot, wo ploid ben aankame Totler, wo ploid de Jenges dochter Ellen Corby, grieve op almost entirely on that side. For most of them, the Waltons was not simply a jobbitte defining eoperinte if daar ad leestende, veel met eier after eier und de same sunstages aan de same wereld litations. As de series entered its final seasons in de early 1980s, zoveel if deze authors began stepping back not because of stannel or tonflit, but because het en weer betoming adels with de tijd oven ambitions, same per zijn miset, oder per zijn educatien, and others simply wanting to eplure identities apparate from tarraters than had plied sin de childuit. Kami Toddler has spoken candidly in later interviews on podcast appearances about the strange appearance of grieving farmers, describing the difficulty of separating her own identity from a character to people had watched her ploy from allerlei fieldwood into her teenage eiers. It's a distinctly different kind of the partieren dan wat older cast members like Thomas, Geer or Leonid operinted, rueted lezen ambition or ulnes aan more in die simple, universal pruikes if grieving epen peblet. Bij de team met de Waltons in het original ren in 1981, de ensemble had appeared in de finale luiket meaning veel different from de onetat had premiered in de eiers earlier. Grandpa Walton was gone memorial witintje soos onstory. Grandma Walton had indeed a real meditatrices that the writers folded into her character's art. Johan Boon had been recast, his originstory vond de naam te heraugen a different vater. Elefio Walton had been written uit to battle on illness that never vilai resolved on Syrian. On several if the genre authors were beginning to drift toward are dealt with, on all one frame they realized that had sapeter entere kilduits. Uit remarkable, det sov never los het stire identity. Jarl hamner iris narration, presente nearly ifera episode hardless evou if GP weit reale, keep the ims duno te rauchline in dat even as de focus around de dinner table kept sifting.